young people. Welcome to the Young Voice podcast. For new listeners to this podcast, the Young Voice podcast discusses young people's talk about cultural wealth, natural sustainability, the uniqueness of the work of the nation children, and youth innovation for the betterment of the nation in your spare time. So, don't forget to keep up to date with every episode of the Young Voice podcast. And on this occasion, we will discuss the topic about how to attract youth to love local culture, which will be guided by me, Ines, and our special guest named Kak Rayhan. Do you feel that nowadays many outside cultures are very easy to enter and are followed by many national youth who eventually become a boomerang for the existence of local Indonesia culture? Well, I'm sure it's not just me who feel this. Certainly among the listeners of the Young Voice podcast, there are also those who feel that way. In this episode, we will find out how to suit the current conditions of young people to love the local culture even though the outside culture has flooded and attached to the current youth. Without further ado, let's start the chat with Kak Rayhan. Okay, Kak Rayhan. Hello, Kak Rayhan. How are you? Can you tell me what's your busy now?
Hello Ines, I'm very well. My current busy schedule is lectures and martial arts training.
Wow, interesting. So, Kak Rayhan is studying at Bina Sarana Informatik University, majoring in communication science, and is in semester 3. Isn't it, Kak Rayhan?
That's right Ines. Coincidentally, I'm currently participating in the Bela Negara campus program, a kind of student exchange where I studied at Zhafirah campus and studied courses across majors.
Wow, it must feel exciting to have such an opportunity. Besides, we get a lot of new insight and knowledge, and also made a lot of friends and was able to get acquainted with other campus environment. We are in it not one to give guys. The guest this time is really special and so cool.
You can just do it Ines. It's also known as call guys.
Okay, it's just I just answered the first question. Of the many cultures that exist in Indonesia, what culture does Kak Rayhan like most? Try to call it just one so that our loyal listeners know.
I really like the culture of mutual aid because I think the community concern for another is very high, like no distance. Helping each other regardless of social status or race or religion. I have a story as I about to move house. My neighbors around my house help transport things without me for help years. Therefore, I really like the culture of mutual cooperation that exists in Indonesian society. It's this kind of culture that we should keep it because the culture of people in other countries do not necessarily have such a culture.
Wow, it's very interesting the answer and the story. Okay, I also totally agree with Kak Rayhan said just know that the high sense of care of the Indonesia people is a culture that deserves thumbs up and deserve our attention guys. I also had the experience of asking tourists I met in some place relate to the most memorable thing while in Indonesia is what? They will definitely answer people in Indonesia are very friendly. So I'm really proud to hear this. Yeah. And okay, let's continue the second question. Okay, definitely I want to know what do you think is the way to cultivate a love for local culture?
In my opinion, the most important way to cultivate it is that we must know history by studying a lot of history of the nation. The story of how our heroes fight for the independence of this nation, so that later we will understand that preserving Indonesian culture heritage is a way for us to appreciate the service of previous heroes. So that later we will have the awareness that loving Indonesian culture is an obligation for every Indonesian.
Whoa, that's right. I totally agree with that. Because the more we get to know something, the more it will not be lost. Okay. Okay. Rayhan, let's continue the last question. What are the message that you want to convey to young people in Indonesia, or even for loyal listeners on this podcast relate to loving the local culture?
My message to all young in Indonesia and also to all loyal listeners of this podcast. At first, we should always be proud of local product we bring as well. Using such product don't let us be more passionate and proud of outside product than local product. And we must continue to deepen our insight into the history and culture of the nation. Example like exciting culture or going to a historical place such a museum, maybe enough for me.
Oh, okay, it's so cool that our guests are in it this time. By the way, regarding this last message from Rayhan, I respond a little bit first. In the past few months, it seems that young people are enjoying visiting the museum. Because there is so much content viral on social media about aesthetic museums. Before I end this session, I would like to thank you for Rayhan for taking the time. The presentation and the message that you convey were so cool. Anyway, we will invite you in the next session.
You're welcome, Minas. I also thank you very much for being given the opportunity to speak on the Young Voice podcast. Hopefully what I said will be useful to all who listen. I'm waiting for the next invitation.
Okay guys, have finished our episode session in this time. A big thank you to the loyal listeners of the Young Voice podcast. See you in the next episode.